On today's show with Howard Beck, we are going to discuss Giannis and what his game could look like under a new head coach next season. We also need to discuss the idea of the Bucks seemingly looking to make some kind of big move, and what does that do to the stability of a franchise that has had not too much drama over the last few seasons. And if we get time at the end, we might ask about Damian Lillard, because I know everyone watching this show is fascinated about what he is going to do and where he might end up if indeed he does leave Portland. So we've got plenty to discuss. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Bucks. My name is Kane Pittman. You can see and hear me on this show Monday to Friday, and also find my work over at ESPN. And joining us once again, a man that, as we said last time, if you've followed basketball, like I certainly have, you've read his work all over the place, and now recently doing a bunch of stuff at GQ, including a very cool story that took us inside the Denver Nuggets locker room just moments after Game 5. Howard Beck, always a pleasure, my friend.
Always a pleasure to see you, Kane. Thanks for having me.
So before we dive into Giannis, we do have to do a little quick plug here. We have got a live Locked On Bucks next Wednesday, June 28 in Milwaukee. I'll be there. Eric will be there. Frank will be there. Camille, Justin. And we're going to have a fun night there at Broken Bat Brewery in Milwaukee. That's June 28, next Wednesday night. So swing by if you are in the area. Now, last time we spoke, it was a couple of days after the Bucks were bounced very quickly from the postseason, and there was a bunch of things in the air. Mike Budenholzer was still the head coach. We weren't sure which direction that was going to head. So even though a lot of the pieces might feel like they're going to look the same, it does feel like this is somewhat a changing of an era, if you want to go from Bud to now Adrian Griffin. And I think obviously any success the Bucks have are going to start with Giannis. So as you think about Giannis with a new head coach, what he's done the last few seasons, if you were an optimist, a Bucks fan looking for the best from this team, what would you want to see from Giannis under a new head coach? And what does that look like in terms of the growth for him?
Shooting 40% from three.
That's it. That's the show.
There we go. See you later, folks. I mean, Adrian Griffin's never been a head coach in this league, although he has been an assistant for a very long time and on multiple staffs, and has been very highly regarded. And we're going to see what he looks like in that chair for the first time, and how that might impact whether it's Giannis's overall role or the ways to use him or anybody else around him. And we're just not going to know those things until October. I don't even know how to guess on that. But Giannis, like every player at that level, the best of the best got that way because every summer, every offseason, they're putting in work. They're trying to add something to their game. If they're weak with their offhand, they're working on their offhand. And if they're, trying to extend their range, then they're working on their 3-point shot. Or, maybe they're just back in the gym, just working on conditioning and stamina, strength, whatever it may be, footwork. Giannis could be doing any and all of the above, and anything's going to be a plus. He's, already a perennial MVP candidate. So if he never added a single thing to his game or refined a single thing, you could still construct a championship team around him as they already have. But I am curious, like, what were the calls? What are the conversations between Adrian Griffin and Giannis like? What is Adrian Griffin seeing as the necessary next steps for Giannis? What does he want to use him? Or which ways? What are the best ways that he sees to use him next season? And I'm facetious about the 3-point shooting, but obviously, listen, we've all said at times when Giannis makes a couple of those, it's like, ooh, boy, if he gets that down, it's all over. And his best use is still as a guy who's slashing to the basket and is impossible to keep, away from the rim. But yeah, the more, stuff you got in the bag, as they say, the better off you are. So, obviously, I think most of this offseason is going to be less about what Giannis is doing and more about what the Bucks are doing to kind of refortify around him and maybe try to get younger and what happens with Middleton, what happens with Brook Lopez. But the superstars never sleep. And I fully would expect that Giannis comes back, as committed and as determined as ever, because when you've won one and then you've fallen short a couple times, like it starts to really like for the players with the most pride. And again, he's in that category, and you see it and you know it. And he can say it wasn't a failure, but we all know like it's eating at him that they lost in the first round. I would expect that to fuel a pretty active summer from Giannis.
So this is something we've discussed a little bit on this show, but I'm curious how you feel about it. So with the way that he plays, and you spoke about the determination, also the physicality, he's going to turn 29 in December. I'm just more interested about if there is a next phase in terms of evolving his game to look after himself from a physical standpoint. I mean, the way he plays, the amount of times he's on the floor, hitting bodies, guys trying to take charges left, right, and center, as much as it might help the Bucks offense overall, it feels like from a physical standpoint, it would help him to be able to evolve and bring some of those things. It doesn't have to be the three-point shot, but whether it is a little more mid-range, whether it's outside the restricted area, scoring in the paint, my concern is just the toll on his body with the way that he plays.
It's a punishing style, but at least it's not John Morant punishing style, right?
Yeah.
Like he's a Giannis is a virtual 7-footer and built. I mean, we know what he looked like when he first arrived and what he looks like now. He can take a lot of that. So I'm not there's only so many times you want to get knocked to the floor that can take a toll on various things like, I don't know, your back might be relevant in this case. So there's some of that, but part of that is just like, that's just the game, man. Like and he's going to be 29. He's still firmly in his prime. I know that health is part of the reason for when they have fallen short, especially this spring, but I don't know that I'm so much worried about Giannis's the toll he's taking. Everybody who plays, like, look at how many times Joel Embiid is on the floor. I'm more concerned with him on some level because there's a lot more impact when he hits because he's just a really big dude, but also he has a history of back issues in addition to other stuff. I think you're right though that the mid-range game and whether it's the floater or just your footwork and avoiding contact or finding a way to take advantage of the way defenses are playing you and score in other ways that don't require getting pounded on quite as much. Yeah. Not a bad idea. I also think as somebody who early on was tabbed as like, oh, he could be like a point forward type. He could be another version of like LeBron, and Jason Kidd decides, oh, he's the point guard, which was never really the case entirely. But obviously he's a guy who can do a lot with the ball in his hands. Like I always look at if you are a superstar who's got the ball in your hands a lot. So I'm not talking about centers aside from Jokic. But I'm talking about mostly wing players, and Giannis is just a big wing, right? You have multiple responsibilities, among which is it's really on you to make sure everybody's involved. I know they've got Drew Holiday is the point guard by name, by label. Chris Middleton does a lot of playmaking, but Giannis is the the sun that everybody is orbiting around, and as great a scorer as he is. Hey, I wouldn't mind seeing that 5-6 assists a game get up to 7, 8, 9. I'm not expecting him to turn to Jokic tomorrow. And his best use is probably still as sort of a battering ram. But obviously not always a battering ram, back to the sensitivity about the injuries. But I think you can leverage yourself and the gravity that you create. You can always do that better. You can always do that more. You can always look for your teammates a little bit more. I'm not saying he's selfish by any stretch. I do think he got a little bit too enamored of his distance shooting last season, and that hurt them at times probably. So find another way to bend the defense and use your teammates more. Every star in his position can use more of that.
And part of this for the Bucks moving forward is going to be about the moves they make around Giannis, as it is for any superstar. You already referenced the Chris Middleton decision and Brook Lopez. So I want to ask you about the idea of this Bucks team having an eye to the future and what that looks like in 3 or 4 years, or what it looks like for the next 1 to 2 years, because as far as assets go, the Bucks are in an interesting spot. So we'll get to that next after I talk about BetterHelp. our sponsor of the show today. And we all know it's so easy to get caught up in what everyone else needs from you and never take a moment to think about what you need from yourself. But when we spend all of our time giving, it can leave us feeling stretched thin and burned out as well. Therapy can help with that. I can certainly attest to that. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire or get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time as well. So the fact it's online is nice for everyone. You might not want to go into a building, sit in a waiting room, run into people you know. So that's the beauty of BetterHelp, all online and very convenient as well. So find more balance with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, so we've got the draft coming up this week, and we'll have it all covered on Locked On Bucks, although at this stage, it doesn't really look like it's going to be a big night for the Bucks. They've got pick 58 right now, but there has been reports that the Bucks might be interested in moving into the first round, late first round, early second round, try and get another pick there. They were reported to be involved in the Bradley Beal situation. So it brings me to this question, Howard, when it comes to the Bucks. And they don't have a lot of flexibility. They don't really have a lot of assets. They've got these two older free agents that have been such key pieces with Chris Middleton and Brook Lopez. Well, we assume Chris Middleton's going to be a free agent. And a lot of the times when we discuss someone like Bradley Beal, a lot of Bucks fans will be like, well, yeah, but you have to pay him $50+ million in a few years, all this. But to me, this is a Bucks team that, as you pointed to, Giannis is in his prime. You're trying to win a title this year. You're trying to win a title next year. Maybe a Chris Middleton contract extension looks longer than you want, given the injuries in recent years. But how do you balance where the Bucks are at right now, understanding they need to do whatever they can to, one, keep Giannis happy and hopefully bring another title in this era, or look into the future a little bit? Because I think it's complicated.
It's complicated. I always say, like, when you've got a player like Giannis, Luka, Jokic, LeBron and Steph at this stage of their careers, any stage, the clock is always ticking, and you've always got to be all in on right now. In the case of Steph and LeBron, it's simplified, right? I say in those cases, there is no future. There is no tomorrow. Who cares? Send out every draft pick you got to send out. Help them in the immediate term, because you've got two all-time greats who still have the ability to lead your team to championships, and that should be all that matters. It's more complicated for the Bucks in a sense. Like, I'm not saying it's easier for the Warriors or the Lakers, but I think, to me, the calculus is simpler. LeBron's got 2 to 3 years left, maybe. Steph, 2 to 3 years left, maybe. I don't know how many years it's going to be, but like somewhere in that range, right? You're all in on right now. But the Bucks, if you assume, and we shouldn't, but if you try to plan for the idea that Giannis is not there just for 2 or 3 years, but in the next 5 or 10 that he's going to retire there someday, you can never just say screw the future the way that I have very cavalierly with LeBron and Steph's teams. Because with the Bucks, yeah, you got to be all in on right now and trying to win a championship every single season. But if you don't win now, you're still hoping to have Giannis in a couple of years, and you don't want to be hamstrung. So it's a fine line they're walking. There was a lot of risk involved in sending out all those picks to get Drew Holiday in the first place, but it obviously paid off. You would do that 1,000 times out of 1,000, but it did mortgage some of the future, and it used those assets that cannot be used again, right? So now the only option is there's a 2029 first round pick, I think, that they could use. You can always try to buy a pick and then send those out, or you trade some of your ancillary players for some second rounders and then package those. I mean, there's ways to do things, right? As they did for Jay Crowder, who they did not play. But that's the thing, right? That's why, like, every move comes with risk now, because the margin for error is ever smaller, and even more so under this new CBA with all the penalties that come with being a high spending team. So I still say the default mode is you're doing everything you can to try to win immediately, right? Like, they had the best record in the NBA this season. If not for some bad, unfortunate breaks, maybe they're back in the finals. Maybe they're the team that could have beaten the Nuggets. I don't know. But you go into next season feeling like, you know what, we're still one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the NBA. We have a chance every year with this group. And as much as I can sit here and tell you all my concerns about Chris Middleton's health or Brook Lopez's age and his miles and whatever, I don't see a better path than just bringing those guys back, whether it's extending Middleton or whether he's opting out and re-signing him or whatever, and re-signing Brook Lopez. Like I don't know that there's a better alternative. You have a formula that works. It doesn't need massive upgrades, maybe just some tweaks, some extra shooting.
So have you been surprised in that case? Because I think that is, regardless of what the money is going to look like, and clearly the Bucks are in an interesting financial position with all the new CBA stuff, but that is probably the simplest path forward as long as Brook Lopez and Chris Middleton want to come back. You made your change at head coach. We'll see. That's really hard. We haven't seen Adrian Griffin in this position. So are you surprised that the Bucks have been at least reported to have interest in Bradley Beal, to have interest in trading one of these role players, which is probably the mid-contract guys, Portis, Connaughton, Grayson Allen, one of those guys is probably what you're hoping to net you a late first-round pick. Are you surprised that they're involved in perhaps making one of these two major moves?
Well, if it was going to be a move for Beal, that would have surprised me, yes, only because his contract is enormous. He has the no trade clause, which comes with him. So, the Suns are now dealing with the fact that if this doesn't work out in a couple of years, they're again going to be hamstrung and trying to move him again. His final year of his contract is $57 million, which even under, an ever growing salary cap is just a massive, massive amount. So yeah, given all of the other concerns with Beal and that he's not a defender, I would have been surprised to see the Bucks make that move. If you're acquiring him, it means you're probably saying goodbye to Middleton, I think. They didn't. I don't know which pieces they would have been able to trade to aggregate to make Beal's salary. But once his salary is on the books, I don't know that you're going all in re-signing both Middleton and Lopez again, right? So now you're just a fundamentally different team. And if you were going from Middleton to Beal, you're losing size, you're losing defense. And they'll re-sign Middleton for I'm confident much less than what Bradley Beal's contract is. So that one would have surprised me. They were always, they're still being tied speculatively to Chris Paul, and that one doesn't really necessarily make sense to me either. I mean, if you could pick up Chris Paul for the minimum, if he's been traded and waived, fine, great. I also don't think Chris Paul wants to be that far from home. His family's still in LA. I don't think he's going to anywhere in the East, to be honest, once the Wizards figure out where to reroute him or once they waive him. So yeah, the Bucks are not in a position to be making a blockbuster. Obviously the Bradley Beal was a blockbuster in a weird way because he's Bradley Beal, but at the same time, he was on an albatross contract with a no trade clause and was acquired for very, very little. The Bucks could have gotten in on that if they wanted to, I guess, since it didn't cost that much. Of course, Beal would have wanted to also go there because he had the no trade clause. But I don't see them as being in a position for any other blockbusters, just because, like, who are they trading to get in on anybody else? You alluded to Lillard earlier. I don't know how that works exactly. I don't know that they would have anything that the Blazers would want either.
No, I don't think that one is happening. Bucks fans like to dream about that type of thing and what could happen. And we've had discussions about that third pick that keeps getting floated. I just think Portland is in a fascinating situation with whatever direction they try and go, whether it's in the next couple of days or the next couple of weeks as well. But more to come on maybe the immediate future of this Milwaukee Bucks team after we talk about our friends over at Ibotta, because groceries, school shopping, or maybe getting something for yourself, you know that you already got to do it. So why not get cash back for it with Ibotta? Watching your closet grow after purchasing all of this season's latest trends. How about also watching your cash back grow with each purchase as well? And you can do that with Ibotta. You can earn cash back with every shopping trip. Ibotta gives you cash back on hundreds of grocery items, from produce to personal care to pantry goods as well. Either link your loyalty account or upload your receipt after you shop, and you can get cash back. It's that easy. So right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying the app and using the code LOCKED when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app and use the code LOCKED. That's Ibotta, IBOTTA, in the Google Play or App Store, and use the code LOCKED. So if we continue the conversation about at least being reported to be in the mix for these types of moods, one thing we discussed, or we certainly did through the season when we were talking about the Boston Celtics, who I think is a fascinating team in the East as well, is the idea that you mentioned Chris Middleton, who might be a free agent, but Drew Holiday is probably also in that mix as a 30 million salary guy that if you're trying to make a move like that, it probably has to be one of those guys. If you're trying to move into the first round of the draft, it's probably got to be one of the mid guys. And we've seen a little bit with Boston that the players know what's up. They're smart. And if you're trying to make these moves, does that impact anything in the locker room? And this has been such a stable Milwaukee team that there's zero drama. All the guys are pretty low key. They don't like the spotlight. Would you have any concern if you're a Bucks fan about the team clearly not just sitting on their hands and looking at every single option? I know it's part of the business, but these guys have feelings, Howard.
They do. Yeah. They're all humans at the end of the day. Nobody likes to feel like their, life is about to be thrown into just upheaval and being, shipped around the country. I mean, Chris Paul knew damn well that he was on the trading block, and yet he still went out of his way multiple times after that trade to note to everybody that he was doing he's on a book tour. So he's promoting his book. And so he's doing all these interviews that were prearranged, and he's making sure to make a point in every single one of them. Like, I had to find out from my son, who found out from like Twitter, I guess, or something. And I was on a plane, as opposed to it being informed directly by son's management, ownership, or front office. And so, yeah, even Chris Paul, who's been traded, who's been everywhere, who's been the president of the Players Association, who's been around a long time. Yeah, you still, it can rub you the wrong way if you don't think things are handled in the best way possible. But, the Bucks are a very veteran team. All those guys have dealt with this stuff before. I don't think, if suddenly Drew Holiday's name were in trade rumors, like Drew Holiday's going to be necessarily that rattled by it, or Bobby Portis, or, Pat Connaughton, or anybody like, it is the business. I think players and their representation just want to have teams be straight with them, right? Don't blindside me. If this is something that may be happening, give us the earliest possible notice. And usually it's not because they've soured on you. It's often because you're trying to upgrade and you just see a path to get somebody a little better, or has a different skill set, or just a better fit. So it's not an insult, but you can take it badly if the team hasn't been straightforward, right? So if you're going to trade, say, a Grayson Allen, you want to make it clear, Grayson, look, we love what you do. We think we have an opportunity to get X, or this kind of player. And, we obviously fell short this season, and it's not on you, but we think we need to move some pieces around to try a different path forward. But it's not about you, right? This is not about your flagrant fouls, or your injuring people, or your bad reputation. I'm just being facetious, but no, those are things that float around, right? So you want to know that the team is trading you for the best reasons, and not because of any of your shortcomings. So I think there's a better way to do it and a worse way to do it. But I think these guys, especially with a veteran team like the Bucks, I don't think they're going to be rattled by it. Like I would be more worried about a younger team. Like if there was a lot of stuff floating around, like the Pelicans right now. Listen, like that's a tough one, right?
Right.
Zion himself is now in trade rumors. Brandon Ingram has already been traded from the Lakers to the Pelicans in the first place, and Brandon Ingram is being floated in trade rumors again. They've got a bunch of other really young guys, all these guys they drafted over the last couple of years, who have taken on big roles there. Like that's a little bit more fragile of a situation, I think, in terms of your feeling of togetherness and stability. The Grizzlies kind of have that too. It's a really young team. So like, I think it's more unsettling for a young team than an older team.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. Last one I got for you is just this roster in general. So we've gone through it. We've spoken about the four guys. So Giannis, Chris, Drew, Brook Lopez. If they're back, it was health stuff in the postseason. Whatever. They still lost in the first round. What did you look at with this team and think, okay, they need something? And understanding that it's at this point, it's probably going to need to be periphery. Everyone wants to think about the superstars, but they're going to have to add around the periphery. And I'm not sure if there's a skill set or something you look at with this Bucks team where like, that's what they're missing. And maybe it comes from within. Maybe it comes from the guys that are already on the roster. This is going to be challenging in that regard.
It is. It's really boring to say just run it back, but I don't know that they have that many options. There will be some tweaks around the edges, but are those going to be the difference making moves? Would they bring back Jay Crowder and then actually play him and like listen, like in defense of, I guess, the situation, Jay Crowder had sat out the entire season because of his weird impasse with the Suns. And I don't know, how good a shape was he in, basketball shape? And he didn't have much time to get up to speed either. So does Jay Crowder still have something left in the tank? Because the best versions of Jay Crowder we've seen over the last 5 years or so are pretty damn valuable. Like what if it's just Jay Crowder or a Jay Crowder facsimile that you pick up for the minimum somewhere? I don't know who that would be. When you're this good of a team, if you just have good health, a little good luck, and like one extra 3-and-D guy off the bench, right? A Danny Green type, a Jay Crowder type, whoever, some veteran who's ring chasing, whatever it may be, might be enough. And the fact is, look, all respect to the Heat for doing everything they did and getting to the finals. And it's one of the most incredible postseason runs we've seen based on context. But there was a kind of flukiness to the Bucks losing in the first round, right? I'm like, on the one hand, like colossal, humiliating failure. Again, with apologies to Giannis, but it's not reflective of where they are. It's just something that happened. Like I don't expect it to happen again. I think they're going to win in the mid to high 50s, given health and given probably bringing back all the usual components we've talked about, and they'll be right there. And then it's just a matter of, are you healthy in April and May and June? And is everybody operating at peak capacity? Because if they are, they were already the best team by record in the East and in the league this past season. Why do I have any reason to believe that this same Bucks team brought back 98% of them, plus some good health and good fortune? You know, like why should I expect anything different than a deep playoff run next spring? I do have concerns about age and miles on this roster. I do think that, ideally you'd find a younger version of Chris Middleton. I don't know who that is or if he's available. Good luck. But that's where they are, right? And good luck finding like a younger version of Brook Lopez. Like good luck prying loose Jaren Jackson Jr. from Memphis or something, right? Like, or Bam Adebayo. Like you're not, finding another guy who, and obviously those are different kinds of players, but I'm just saying you have certain quantities that you need in the front court. Not that easy to find. So yeah, we could sit here and talk about like get a little younger, get a little bit more wing depth, all these things, but the market's going to determine a lot of this. The good news is, as per usual, most of the cap room teams are bad teams. And so there should be, when all the cap room has been spent, some veterans who are looking around going, you know what, not quite getting the contract or the multi-year deal I wanted. And I didn't have interest in going to Orlando or Detroit or Houston to be part of a rebuilding effort. But man, maybe I catch on for 1 year or I get a 1+1 or somebody's, mid-level exception and I go ring chase with a team like Milwaukee. Yeah,
this offseason's Bruce Brown, and I know Michael Malone wants him to opt in and not cash in on that deal. But I guess, that's the type of player that, on a smallish contract that maybe you can pick up, and he ends up being a rotation player in the postseason. Though he certainly was for the Denver Nuggets. Anyway, Howard, always appreciate your time. This was really fun.
Always a pleasure, Kane. Thanks.
All right, make sure you keep up with Locked On Bucks this week. As I said, next Wednesday night, June 28th, Broken Bat Brewery in Milwaukee will be there for a live show. You can roll in. It's free. Grab a couple of drinks. I'm sure the company will absolutely love that. And we'll put together a fun show. So we'll all be there for that one. Make sure you check that out. All the draft coverage the next couple of nights. Who knows if the Bucks are going to get involved, but we'll find out over the next couple of days. And until then, we'll speak to you all tomorrow.